Maybe it's just me, but after my initial watch of episode 1 of Severance season 2, I just felt a little meh, a bit disappointed. Maybe it's because I was just coming off the high of rewatching the masterpiece that was season 1. I don't know. But I was disappointed that our innies are right back where we started, man. Back in the same hellscape they fought so hard to escape. In this episode, Mark, of all people, demands to bring the other innies back to Lumon, to force this existence on them again. Wasn't the innies' goal to end their servitude on the severed floor? And yet, at the end of this episode, they all choose to stay, even after seeing that nothing has really changed at Lumon, and they can only expect more of the same prison. But as I watched the episode again to prepare for this video, I started to see the potential. This season is building on the moral and ethical questions posed by the first, offering new thought experiments that kind of push the boundaries of the show's original themes. To start, look at the circumstances when our innies were all last seen alive in season 1. It raises a new question. Is it not the right thing to do to bring them back so they can decide for themselves if they want this life? The way their existence suddenly ended in season 1 was also forced upon them by Lumon. To some, this could be considered like murder. After all, the innies see themselves as distinct individual beings.
The last time I was happy was when all I knew was MDR, when I was good at my job. I'm not trying to be happy.
As the saying goes, ignorance is bliss, and this season delves into what happens after a great awakening like our innies had. They opened up Pandora's box, discovered Lumon's evil, lost their ability to be happy, and trust that things are as they should be. They're starting to learn what basic human dignity should mean. But for some like Irving, this new awareness feels worse than their prior ignorance. They're constantly looking over their shoulders, burdened by these new feelings of pain and fear. They can't go back to the simple happiness they once had. Yet, this knowledge also gives them a new kind of purpose. Like it or not, sometimes the best motivator is hate or revenge. And now the innies have their own reason to stay at Lumon, to finish what they started. All right, let's get into this episode. Without further ado, let's break it down. Season 2 picks up right where Season 1 dropped off, at least to our innies. The last thing Innie Mark remembers before waking up to that all-too-familiar elevator was being at his Audie's sister's house, discovering the truth about his Audie's wife, that she ain't dead, she's alive and at Lumon. And as soon as Innie Mark is activated, he immediately runs towards the wellness room in a rather pointless attempt to find Miss Casey. Because if you remember last season, Miss Casey had been effectively fired as wellness director. Mark was her very last session before she was sent to the testing floor. You know, what Audie Irving was painting over and over again, that place. I expect we will find out more about this testing floor this season, and I think it's pretty clear that Miss Casey is unique in that she doesn't have an Audie. She is truly trapped here at Lumon.
Look, I found a department, one they don't tell us about, one where you don't get to leave.
Well, don't none of us get to leave?
No, I mean, you really don't get to leave, as in they're down there right now.
What, like chained up? Or?
When Mark reaches the wellness room, he finds it's gone. What were once doors are now just a wall. As he is processing what's happening, we notice someone lurking in the hallway, following and watching him. And so we have our first indication that really nothing has changed at Lumon, that control through surveillance, manipulation, and deceit is still the name of the game. I mean, why wouldn't they have his boss waiting at the elevator for him when he first showed up? Were they wanting to see what exactly he would do when first activated? And so his next logical step is to go to his old stomping grounds, find out if there's still a macro data refinement department. And he's surprised to find a group of new data refiners. And who else would you want to kick off your welcome back into hell celebration than good old Mr. Milcheck, with balloons and everything. And so we get the lowdown from Milcheck. He claims it's been 5 months since the incident Lumon calls the Macrodat Uprising. Milcheck hands Mark a newspaper saying they were successful whistleblowers enacting reform of Severance. And here we get another sign that things really haven't changed. The newspaper article is heavily redacted, and Mark barely gets a moment's glance before Milcheck snatches it away. Lumon is a propaganda machine. crafting a narrative that feigns willful ignorance of any wrongdoing of the severed floor. They use Miss Cobell as a scapegoat to avoid culpability, pretending to be oh so grateful for the Innies exposing the truth because now that we know, we can fix it. But this is a new Innie, Mark, and he ain't buying what Milcheck is selling.
I locked you in a room like an animal, Mark. As an unsevered man, I'll carry that knowledge the rest of my life.
Milcheck gives a fake-ass non-apology and then basically tells Mark that this whole thing, the whole reason the Innies had such a bad time in here was because of a weird erotic obsession Miss Cobell had with becoming a throuple with Innie and Outie Mark.
What?
It's in this moment that Mark is 100% sure that they are still playing Lumon's fucked up game, only being told what Lumon wants them to know. Milcheck claims that Mark's Outie basically came crawling back, begging to return to Lumon, while Helly, Irving, and Dylan all refused. And so Mark doesn't really believe him. He challenges Milcheck for proof. This part had me a bit confused at first. Why would Mark's Outie choose to come back? In the season 2 trailer, it seems like he knows Lumon is hiding something about his wife.
Do you know something about Gemma?
Now explain this to me. If their Outies are these supposed famous whistleblowers, then wouldn't you think that they have some power on the outside world? Like working with the feds or some shit, investigating their claims on Lumon? And more importantly, why aren't the police interviewing the Innies themselves? I don't believe Lumon was truly exposed as they claim, and I think that perhaps we will go back in the timeline before the start of this episode when Innie Mark woke up, and we will see Outie Mark kidnapped by Lumon, trapped here like his wife. And at this point for Innie Mark, his main goal right now is to get his team back, reactivate Innie, Helly, Irving, and Dylan. Now again, this kind of confused me. It seems to go against the whole point for their fight for autonomy, and now Mark wants to make the decision for them all to come back. Why? Well, perhaps he's not so different from his Outie self. He cares most about getting some emotional comfort, regardless of what the other Innies want.
You brought him into this world without his permission, based on your own desire for emotional convenience.
But just like before the rebellion, Mark is shut down the moment he starts asking questions and is sent back to play pretend as if nothing's changed. And I mean it, y'all, nothing's really changed. They play that same icebreaker game with the red ball to introduce our new players, and we meet the placeholder MDR team, Mark W, Gwendolyn Y, and Dario R, all new transfers from one of hundreds of severed locations across the world. And then there's their new supervisor, now that Milcheck has been promoted, Ms Huang. And while everyone is a bit taken aback that she's basically a child, they are quickly reminded that she is still a Lumon supervisor and is not to be trusted.
To have made 4 new friends today.
That's nice, Mark, but I have to remind you that I'm a supervisor, not a friend.
3 new friends.
Is the fact that she's a young girl another way to control the Innies by manipulating their unconscious biases, making them underestimate her or even go easy on her, so to speak? I mean, I doubt they'd be as willing to physically attack her like Dylan did to Milcheck in season 1. I have a theory that maybe she's sort of a clone, a body that was grown in a lab to be a vessel for a severed consciousness. I think she was basically born on the testing floor, perhaps even a version of Miss Casey. So far, we've only known of the Severance implant to split a person into 2, but maybe they found a way to create more people, more slaves this way. I mean, how else are they getting away with skirting child labor laws? And not to mention, she is eerily authoritative. Her personality seems much older. If you agree with this theory, or maybe you have a theory of your own, let me know in the comments below. Whatever it is, it's so weird and so wrong that she's their boss. And so Mark is over it at this point. He's not interested in getting to know this new team and continuing the status quo, so he devises a little plan to get his old team back. And it's a stupid fucking plan, but it works. He tries to frame Mark W by putting a note to his Outie in his pocket. But everyone knows it was obviously Mark S who wrote it. And Mark pretends it was all a ruse, claiming the real threat is in the kitchenette. But that too was a distraction so he could get to Milcheck's office and contact the board. Milcheck cuts Mark off, but the damage is already done. And the next time Mark shows up at Lumon, things are looking a little different. Mark sees a large painting on the wall called Kier Pardons His Betrayers, continuing the tradition of rewriting history through art. like in season 1 with the propaganda paintings depicting vicious attacks from both optics and design and macro data refinement. And shortly after Mark arrives, the elevator dings again, and out comes Dylan. They are relieved to see each other, and Dylan immediately starts asking questions since the last he remembers he was being sacked like a quarterback by Milcheck. Mark says he's been there a few days already, assuming it's the next day since his interaction with the board. But I have a sneaking suspicion much more time than that has passed. What do you think? And so one by one they arrive. Irving comes next, and finally Helly. But before they can debrief and process what's happening, Ms Huang shows up to escort them to the dreaded break room. But this time it's different. It's there that they are shown a new onboarding video that Milcheck says will be shown to all future severed employees. They are shown a childlike cartoon telling the heroic tale of their macro-dat uprising, creating reform and a happily ever after for all Innies. Like a damn Disney movie. Lumon treats the Innies like children. It's like the concept of tabula rasa. Newly severed minds are a blank slate, much like those of newborns, stripped of the wear and complexity of life's memories. Like kids, the Innies kinda have to blindly trust their caretakers. They respond easily to positive and negative reinforcement, and let's not forget how Lumon's been rewarding them with busted-ass Chuck E. Cheese level prizes.
What the hell was that?
Massive-ass head game is what that was.
It's still the same mindfuck of a system, but with new cheap rewards like pineapple bobbing and a new mirror playroom, none of which changes the fact that this place is still a prison for the Innies. Severance reform is complete BS, and these Innies are not falling for it. But Mr. Milcheck is leaning into this new and improved Lumon hard. He tells them that this time they have a choice. They can leave or keep working. It's all up to them. Do you think it's possible Lumon knows the Innies will see right through all this bullshit? Possibly another way to trick them into choosing to stay, knowing that after their awakening they would feel compelled to know more, to stay, to fight. It's still very mysterious about what exactly Lumon is up to with all these Innies. I think the work the Innies are doing is all psychological, helping Lumon to learn more about the human mind, to find more ways to control it or even recreate it. What do you guys think? Mr. Milcheck also announces to the macro-dat 4 that there are no longer cameras or microphones anywhere on the severed floor, right before he leaves them to talk amongst themselves in the break room.
Talk amongst yourselves!
Now, I don't buy it for a second, and back in season 1, Petey had suspicions too.
I'm not going to talk about it in here. I don't know if the monitors are bugged.
Our Innies don't trust Milcheck either. The cartoon they just watched quoted them word for word and even mentioned Helly and Mark's kiss, proving there are more cameras and microphones than in plain sight. So they try to quietly game plan. Mark shares that he found out Miss Casey was his Audie's wife, and he's determined to help find out what happened to her for his Audie, so he's gonna stay. Helly, she lies about what she saw, that she was just inside a boring apartment and tried to tell some gardener about what was happening. This was another part that kind of threw me. Why does she lie? Is she afraid that they will turn on her or something? I mean, doesn't it only make sense that they of all people would understand her? That they can possibly use the fact that she's an Egan to their advantage? I think that it's possible Helly is compromised, a mole. When the Innies first arrived here, she was the first to point out the security cameras.
Wait, what happened to the security camera?
And she has been acting a little suspicious to me, too calm, not giving away much. Perhaps she's Audie Helly, or maybe she was convinced one way or another to join the dark side. Otherwise, why lie? I'm curious if anyone has any other thoughts on this. And let's not forget about our man Irving. Initially, he shuts down about what happened when he was on the outside, but later he admits to Dylan that he went to go see Bert. Irving decides he wants to leave. He too is like Audie Mark in that he is desperate to be relieved of the pain of losing the love of his life, even if it means he would effectively be dead. And as they're hugging in a farewell embrace, Irving secretly tells Dylan about the paintings of the elevator to the testing floor. As Dylan tries to convince Irving to stay, Ms Huang shows up. It feels like Milcheck was watching and sent her to interrupt their secret scheming. And so, Milcheck tries to get his claws into Dylan, manipulate him to play ball. Milcheck brings Dylan into a secret back room in the admin office and shows him blueprints for a new visiting room to spend time with his outies family. Milcheck is basically grooming him. It's disgusting. He's making him feel special to be in on the secret, building something that he knows Dylan truly desires, dangling the carrot for control, and I believe eventually will be used as leverage, even bribery. And so the episode ends and the gang is back. After really analyzing this episode, I do feel a lot more optimistic about how this story will unfold. What do you think about my theories? Too wild or out there, or not thinking big enough? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoyed this video, please consider throwing a like and be sure to subscribe for more Severance content, as well as theories about the show from. I plan to explore more TV and movie topics in the future, so also stay tuned. As always, until next time, toodles.